Oh, Chris. Okay, we're recording now. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a while, Zach. How are you?
Oh man, it's been a while. It's usually it's your fault, but this time it's my fault because I had this little operation and I sounded so crap last week that there was just no point, recording anything. So yeah, it's all my fault. So I'm happy to take that on the chin. I think that's the only thing I can actually take on the chin. I've got a jaw made of glass, mate. So anyway, so
Alex
yeah,
Claw.
what's new, man?
Nothing, man. Just trying to survive mentally.
Okay. Are you still in
Yeah.
lockdown? As in lockdown? Okay. Are you still in isolation?
No, no. I'm out. I worked today for a little bit,
Okay.
but I don't know. It's just everybody. The whole society is pretty down and
Mm,
stuff. So it's just not been super fun recently. But I don't know. Hopefully, we'll see greener pastures sooner than later. But
mm.
I don't really know any answers at this point.
Well, as long as they're German pastures, I think travel beyond Germany is going to be quite challenging, isn't it, over the coming weeks?
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. You also went to Portugal at the right time. I think since your return, they've had a bit of an outbreak, apparently.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
week I got back, or after I got back, they shut down everything, and
Chris, what have you done?
I didn't bring it there.
I hope not. That'd be one hell of a guilt trip for you to have for the rest of your life.
They have quite the UK population there, so
Okay.
it's
So
probably
there.
coming from all the retired English folk making their way down to the Archive to
Mm,
relax in the
yeah,
winter.
that's it. That's it. Blame the Brits, man. That's definitely the trend. I think the growing trend at the moment around the world, and yeah, some of it justifiably too. But still, okay. Yeah, normally U.S. presidents are analyzed, shall we say, after their first 100 days. Is that something that goes back to Lyndon Baines Johnson or before? I can't.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
First 100 days. That's how rate them.
Obviously, Trump was, by his own admission, the best, as in president over the first 100 days. He did more than anybody had ever done throughout their presidency, even. But, moving back towards reality, how do you think Mr. Biden has done so far? It's only been a couple of weeks, so.
Uh, Personally, I haven't. I've kept up a little bit. I haven't read too much, but I know just he made some pretty big executive orders his first week that were kind of important, especially like the Paris Agreement, getting back into that. Um, but he said a lot of things about his first on his list was to combat the coronavirus and get it under control. And that was his whole campaign thing. And well, for what I'm hearing is most of the restaurants are staying open and bars, and some are opening more. So it looks like maybe he has a different strategy, but we'll see. But I think it's just overall the mood is a lot better in the of Americans. They feel at least they have someone who's has a conscience and is
Mm.
not, you know,
Is it?
not a
It's
dictator.
it seems like the stories emerging from the White House have diminished somewhat. So, before you used to practically have a news cycle every, 3 or 4 hours, a new tweet, another controversy, another damning statement from somebody or other. But now things have settled down to perhaps what they were like pre-Trump, when you had a press briefing practically every day and everything was as normal. So, do you think some people in the press are actually, regretting it in some sense? Because I mean, newspapers, with Trump, they made a lot of money, didn't they?
Yeah, I think some of the bigger networks are definitely, losing. Like that was just a huge part of their programs was Trump, and there's plenty of stuff to write about and talk about. So there's a little transition, but we'll see. I think they're still talking about him. when they can. They're
Mm.
still working on this impeachment. And I think a lot of the other Republicans who are kind of radical are showing their true colors, and a lot of people are attacking them, like Ted Cruz recently, and this crazy woman from Georgia. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
heard about her.
what's
She's really
going?
nuts, man.
But she's also like a QAnon believer, or maybe even a member of the movement. I think she's like quite hardcore, isn't she?
Yeah, it's really crazy. But I mean, I see what happened. She's from this small county in Georgia that was like 95% Trump supporters, and they're known for. There's never been like a Democrat elected in 40 years, but she's just she's crazy, man. She thinks she says, and she attacked. She doesn't believe in the school shootings, and there was a survivor who has been trying to get the gun laws changed, and she's attacking this. The guy's like maybe 18 or 19, and she's attacking him in the street, telling her that she has a gun and that you're gonna take her guns away. It's just you're a representative of your community and your country, and just to have these kind of views, I don't understand why they're allowing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, there was. I do remember after the 6th of January, I think assault. Some people call it insurrection. Please, anybody put whatever word you think is best there. Joe Biden and quite a few politicians thereafter came out and said, "No, this isn't American society. We have to be better than this. We have to show who we really are." And then, and I thought to myself, 1 minute, I'm not quite sure that that's the correct assessment. I don't mean to, put your country down, Chris, but American society has shown itself to be quite violent, especially over the last few years. And Miss Rapinoe, who is a very outspoken professional American football player, she came out, I think, quite clearly and said, this is exactly who the USA is. And now these elements of our society are really showing their true colors. Where do you stand on that?
No, I think it's very. I mean, Americans are very aggressive and want to be heard, but let's just make it clear that what happened on January 6th is not a representation of Americans. Those people are radical domestic terrorists who were radicalized by a dictator and a leader named Donald Trump, and that's the kind of things that happen when you have these people who are in power like that. They make people feel empowered, and the people who don't like other ones, and the racist, and they gave them an opportunity, they gave them a voice, and it's kind of sad that so many people lost their lives, threw away their lives, disrespected people that they care about because of Donald Trump and his beliefs and their beliefs. I don't know. I never thought that could happen. And also, to me, it seems like a total conspiracy because how can you let growing up in the D.C. area, like you go by the Capitol, you can barely drive 3 or 4 blocks in front of it without being without there's gates and police. And then on this day, these people just walk up the stairs and police are running, and it's like, how does this happen? So it definitely was an inside job, and also all the police officers that are coming out that are being charged that were there, it kind of represents what the problem with the police are. That's why you have all these inequality and issues and police brutality problems, because the police, some police officers are white supremacists and power crazy QAnon conspiracy theorists.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, in the future, I'd like to have a chat with you also about conspiracy theory, conspiracy fact, conspiracy or alternative, histories and so on, because there is a certain reputation that conspiracy theories have and theorists have, but for some reason this is like a universal brush used to tarnish every kind of theory, even when some of them are actually backed up with a bit of evidence. So there are varying degrees, shall we say, of theory. But what you say you know, stands up to analysis, doesn't it? If normally you have a situation where there are, protective law enforcement groups in an area, and then on a specific occasion there are none, and on that occasion something happens which hasn't happened in many, many years, then you do tend to think, this isn't purely a coincidence. It can't be.
No, it's not. And then the head of the Capitol Police and some other heads retired. Yeah, they resigned the next day. One senator said when he arrived at the Capitol that day, he's never seen less police presence ever. And he's been a senator for like 20 years. He's been coming to the Capitol. He's like, there's the fewest police officers he's ever seen guarding the Capitol that day, especially the biggest day in 4 years of the counting of the electoral votes. And there isn't heavy police presence, especially after they're constantly checking these websites and these apps and Twitter, and people are talking about, we need to meet on this day. We're going to take over the Capitol. And we're going to hang Nancy Pelosi, and we're going to make them pay for stealing the election. We're going to stop the steal. It's like nonsense.
I mean, this even spread to Germany. So I saw an article about how there are sort of active QAnon communities in Germany, and essentially they were saying the exact same things. And on the 6th of January, they were there waiting in anticipation of something to occur. And it's, I mean, if people in Germany are aware from these groups, these Telegram groups that they were, that something is going to happen, it would strike me as a bit strange that the FBI or other parties in the USA in law enforcement didn't. But yeah, okay, all right, that's a different issue as well. So I mean, there are so many things to talk about, man. But so we wanted to focus today a little bit on betting.
My favorite.
Yeah, is that why you left the USA, so you could do
my love-hate relationship with online sports betting?
Okay. Okay. How did you get into it first, and why do you like it so much?
Well, I always thought it was very interesting. I'm a huge sports fan. And then a couple years ago, I used to play a lot of golf and spend a lot of time at country clubs with, middle upper class white guys and with dispendable income. And they would always be betting on football games and basketball games while we were playing, talking about the spread. And I was like, man, I want to get in on this. So I asked one of my friends, like, how can I, get in? He was like, oh yeah, I have my buddy's a bookie, because it was illegal at this point in the States. So they had like some offline website and accounts, and really you just make a deposit and you make the bet. But the thing about it was kind of tricky is like you end up having to PayPal some guy later. You PayPal, you have the money in your account, and if you put the money up, you lose, you owe somebody the money, and it can kind of go south really bad, fast. But then when I moved here, I started when I was working with this guy from Guinea, Tijan, a good friend of mine. And every day he would talk about like how he would lose. He's like, Manchester United. He's like, they always lose. They never can win. And I was like, yeah, it's very true. It's typical Manchester United. What's that?
You had to pick United, right? Manchester United, of course.
I just wanted to state facts.
Yeah.
So I'm like, every day he's talking about it. So then when I realized that it was legal here, I was just interested, and I think it's like summer or winter. I think the winter of 2000. No, it was like 2019, like February, March. I started going to the bet shop across the street, and I would just go for like one game a week, a big game, and put like 20 euros down and get my little ticket. And then, I had a account in the UK, like Bet365, I think it is. and they changed some rules, and then I think they found out I was American, and like I don't know, and they blocked my account. But I was just, I just learned from that. But I don't know, it just made watching soccer, football, whatever you want to call it, more exciting for me. I already like watching it, and then when you put a little bit of money on it, it just makes it more exciting, especially with the winters and these gray and gloomy days and Saturdays when you're just a little hungover and nothing to do. You just put some money on the game, and then when I got the app on my phone back, it's just I started strategizing more, and then you get better at it. But I don't know. The book always wins at the end of the day. It's hard to be successful, but I do enjoy it.
So, I mean, how do you look at it then? Because, all right, you know quite a bit about sport, obviously, so you're not just randomly picking out, numbers from a hat or anything. You analyze the game. I mean, do you only bet on games that you're familiar with? Do you only bet on sports that you're familiar with, for example?
Yeah, well, when I first started, I would just bet kind of randomly, and I would always bet like the big teams. And then I realized that I need to kind of keep up with it and keep a streak. So then now I kind of have like 4 teams that I kind of watch like consistently, and I try to play them, when I think it's going to be a win. But the thing that's difficult is like when you think they're going to win, you always lose, and then when you play, you lose. But when you think they're going to win and then you don't play, they win. So
Mm.
it's tough. But I started looking at who's playing home and away. Since there's no fans, definitely made it more difficult, I think,
In,
because it's more of a neutral ground. There's no home field advantage. When you had the home field, I mean, you knew teams were going to play at like an Anfield or wherever. It's going to be a tough game. Because I used to go to the bet shop, and I think like Arsenal was playing Liverpool at Liverpool, and Arsenal was playing really well, and I think a lot of players for Liverpool were out, and I put money on Arsenal, and I remember the bookie guy at the shop looked at me and goes, "Liverpool lose at home? Okay, give me the money."
yeah, I guess you didn't see that money back.
No, but I try not to go too far with it and get too deep, but if I win a couple games, then I might go a little bit higher. I also like when there's not UEFA. What's the other UEFA? Europa League.
Okay.
Like those games are very easy to pick, and then I'll usually do like a single ticket 5 or 6 games for €5, and you can win like 50 to 60 euros.
Oh, like an accumulator. You do one on two.
Yeah, it's especially the early rounds. Like the matchups are just like huge club versus little club, and you just know the odds are in your favor.
Mm. But I mean, for example, NBA, because the other night I watched a game. I think it was Jazz against the Nuggets, and the Jazz had been on like an 11-game winning streak or something, and then the Nuggets came out and just destroyed them.
Yeah,
I guess.
basketball's a lot tougher. And the thing about betting in like U.S. sports, which I don't, I mean, I enjoy all of it, but it makes it a little more difficult, is they have these money lines and spread lines, and like soccer, you just pick a winner, and then
Mm.
and then whatever the odds they give the winner, if they give them €2, €3, then you just get that times whatever you put in. But in the U.S., like you play basketball, and so that game, say Utah was favored by 4.5 points, and you pick Utah, like they have to win, and even if they win or if they win by 4.5, they have to win by more than 4.5, I think, to
Yeah,
get
it's
the
a
money.
spread. If it's a spread bet, then yeah, if they anything above 4.5 that they win by, that's basically that
Yeah.
multiplies your stake, I think.
So really, I mean, you almost get, if you bet the underdog, you have like 2 chances to win, because they can still lose, but say they lose by 2 points, you still win.
Mm.
So, that's tricky. But I read a lot on Twitter what people are betting and check the weather, check who's playing. And now I've watched so many games, like I can check the lineup, and I'm like, oh, okay, definitely. Like when Manchester played
Sheffield
Liverpool
United. Oh, okay. Yeah.
on Sunday
Mm.
or last Sunday, I was like, when I saw the lineup, I saw Manchester United's lineup, I was like, oh man, that's a good lineup. But I was like, Liverpool's lost 5 games in a row. It's a big match. They're gonna win. But I mean, sometimes the line, and Paul Pogba's been playing so well lately. It's like night and day when he's playing well.
Yeah, I think United hit a bit of a patch where they didn't really perform very well. So 0-0 against a very an injury affected Liverpool team, and then to go down 2-1 to Sheffield United in the way that they did. So I mean, okay, the referees afterwards reported that they made a mistake. United should have won 2-1 according to the decisions, but still, I mean, the performance of Sheffield United was really good. They were defensively very solid and so on. So Manchester United's attacking, it wasn't particularly effective. And then, of course, the game against Arsenal, again, not particularly free flowing. So, I mean, these things happen in sport. That's why we watch sport, isn't it? Because it's unpredictable. I mean, and that's the nature of the beast. If we could predict everything, then what would be the point of watching it?
Exactly. And then when you have a game, like I play a lot of games, but every once in a while you get this game where like a team goes down 2-0 in the first half and they win 3-2, and you put your money on the team who was down and they turn it around. It's just like you're jumping up and out of your chair and running around your apartment screaming and super excited to win 15 euros. But I don't know, it's a highlight of my day.
I bet your neighbors love you.
Yeah, they do. I
Yeah.
love them too.
But I mean, okay, this is the sort of perhaps the more positive side of gambling. But let's talk a little bit more about the other side. So, okay, when you arrived in Germany, you were like, whoa, they've got gambling here. So, can you sort of tell me about this cultural element in the USA? Because it's quite surprising for most people when they think, well, you can't gamble in anywhere in the US. Okay, now because of the Supreme Court decision in 2018, since then 11 states have legalized online gambling, betting, but they're still awaiting so some states have already begun, other states they're waiting for the start date to be confirmed, and so on. So I mean, it's still not universal all over the states, but why is this? Why is there this limit? I mean, how come it's taken so long for the USA to allow people to bet?
That's a good question. I mean, I really don't. I mean, if I did some research, I could probably give you a decent answer, but I think it has something to do with prohibition, alcohol, gambling, just that kind of control back then. Also, I know like Nevada was one of the only states where gambling was legal, certain types of gambling. Other states you could play like slot machines and card games, but sports betting wasn't legal in all states. And also, I think it was more like trying to like certain states controlled the gambling, so they wanted to keep it like that for like tourism reasons and that sort of thing. But if you think about the amount of money that if you have by having like gambling and casinos, these places can make, then it's fine. But I mean, it's not like gambling was completely illegal everywhere, but the Supreme Court made it so nationally you could have it, especially like sports gambling, and it's been a huge investment. I invested in some a company that was really big. That was like the head of the sports gambling called Penn National, and I made a lot of money off of that when
Okay.
they changed that law.
Also, you mean in shares, the share price?
Yeah. Investing in bought a bunch of stock from them, and when they changed it, it just boomed because that's what people are getting into. And then they're going to open up some sports betting bar type places outside a lot of the arenas in the U.S. Like they're doing one in D.C., So you can go to before and like have some beers and then bet on the, place your bets and watch games and then go watch the live game. So it seems like a perfect situation for sports fans.
Mm.
But also, I guess betting is, can be very dangerous too, So maybe for societal reasons, they just wanted to keep more of control and kind of slowly see how it goes.
But this is the thing that I wanted to. I mean, I want to get into the potential dangers, which are, I suppose, quite well known anyway. But a bit later. But I mean, with regards to this element, it strikes me as strange because in almost every other way, the USA or the government, consecutive governments from both sides, are very non-interventionist. And so to have such a clearly interventionist policy of a blanket ban on sports betting seems really strange, especially if you imagine the tax revenue that the individual states and the federal government could get from legalizing betting.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, there's also such an underworld of it in the U.S. in the 80s and 90s that maybe, the mafia and other groups were trying to keep it illegal for their profitability.
Okay, so you think that this extensive sort of organized crime racketeering lobbies, wanted it to remain as it was, so that they could control it and profit from it?
Yeah. I mean, somewhat.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem a bit strange. I mean,
because I know like when I was like in Maryland, like horse racing's huge. So you can bet on horses, but you can't bet on people.
mm-hmm.
They made casinos legal, like so poker and slot machines in the last 10 years, which was huge. And it created like thousands and thousands of jobs and created revenue and taxes. And so that was big. But the sports betting, that's the only one that's really been legal in the States. And I just don't, I wish I had an answer about it.
Was it there like I do recall some kind of scandal in American football, I think in the 90s, about betting. When they were betting on their own team, players were involved in some kind of betting circles. Do you recall this? Do you recall this scandal?
Yeah. The one I know the most about is college basketball.
Okay.
And it was the mob, the New York mob was directly involved in it, and they had approached. Like, have you seen Goodfellas?
Yeah.
So like Henry Hill, he has an interview and he talks about I forget what school. It was a Villanova or something. I forget the school, but they had had the players. They went to the players' dorms and stuff, and we're muscling them, saying like, "Hey, like we got a game coming up, and you're gonna make some money, and we need you to make sure like the score is not between 10 points." And then one guy on the team, like we get a couple other guys and say, "Hey, man, if we win by 10 points, I'll give you $500." And these are college kids who don't have like money, who are trying to make it, and they're seeing all the big time professional athletes making money, and they're living in a dorm and struggling. And then next thing you know, they have some Italian mafia guy giving them money to throw, not even throw games, but just make sure the score is correct. Miss a couple free throws here and there, and they made a lot of money. Like the one big fix, I mean, they made tons of money on this one story, but I was watching it on the airplane a couple months ago. But yeah, I mean that was their direct way to get into it.
I mean, it's strange how these seem to occur mostly with the lesser known sports or lesser known teams, because there's less focus on on these kinds of games. And obviously, you can actually have these really strange results. which it's less likely, for example, for Aston Villa to beat Liverpool 7-2 than it is for some two semi-professional teams to go at it, and you can have an 8-1 or a 9-0 or a 10-0 quite frequently in the lower leagues, which you wouldn't normally experience in the sort of higher echelons of professional sport, in any sport, essentially, I imagine. So it makes sense that they go after college basketball more than NBA. But I mean, a lot of the power for American sports is held in the hands of the leagues, isn't it? So as in the NBA, they're in charge of all of the merchandising. They're in charge of the contracts, is it, of players and so on. They have a lot of power, don't they?
And TV, their TV contracts.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like the Houston Rockets, their general manager made a comment about like the genocide going on in China, like the same thing Mesut Ozil made a comment about, and Arsenal lost. They stopped selling jerseys in China, Arsenal jerseys, and when the GM of the Houston Rockets said something about the genocide, they lost a $150 million like TV contract in China, and Houston Rockets were like China's favorite team because of Yao Ming.
Yeah.
So it's big money. So also maybe these big teams like the NBA, the NFL, MLB, maybe they weren't able to control the betting and the money, and they also I think they're also afraid of it ruining the integrity of the league. Like players are going out, and the players like, hey, you can bet on players. Like you can bet on Russell Westbrook to score over or under 30 points. So if you're like, hey, I'm playing tonight, and you go put 2,000 on yourself, and you say I'm gonna score under 30, and the odds for you to score under 30 or blah 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 or over 30, then you can make good money on yourself, and you tell your friends and other bookies. But I don't know. I don't know why. It's very strange that it wasn't legal for so long, but it's just like the U.S. tried to just have control over so much, like with like marijuana was like a huge, like every state had these strict laws and prohibiting smoking weed anywhere, and then as soon as they started legalizing it and decriminalizing all these states, they just saw it as profitability and crime went down, and there's just less stress and less people are getting arrested for it. But for years it was like, say no to drugs, marijuana is a gateway drug. In school, people's parents are like, no, don't, trying to catch their kids smoking dope. And now, you got parents and kids smoking together, and it's not even an issue. And,
Yeah. But I mean, do you think
times?
Yeah, okay. I mean, times change. Unfortunately, times change sometimes slowly, depending on what social phenomena we're talking about. But in the case of of sports betting, do you think there's a scenario where the NBA will say essentially, you can only bet on our games if you have an official license, or do you think that's impossible for them to introduce and enforce?
No, or like whoever you bet through, like Penn National or whoever, they might have to pay a tax to the NBA for each game. So you bet on a game, you bet 100, they have to pay 1% tax to the NBA. So they pay $1 per bet.
But that's harder to enforce outside of the States, yeah? So, if you use a European, betting company, and, we're in Germany and we bet on, a specific game in the NBA, I mean, the NBA can't say.
You only get certain games. That's why I think there has to be something around it, because you only get so many games, and you only get certain games
that you can bet on.
Yeah, and then you'll get random. Like I bet on my alma mater the other day because I saw it pop up on my app. And they're not like a big school, small, 20,000 students, like never on national TV, but they were like one of the 4 college basketball games on the app the other night.
So 1 minute. So they limit the games that you can actually bet on?
No, I mean games in the U.S. Like I don't know.
Yeah,
Cause
so
like,
if you,
'cause like say like NBA, any given night there's like 15 games on, right? Or 8 games or whatever. Like Saturday night there's a bunch, and most teams are playing. And I checked like the BWin app. There's only like 3 games you can bet on. And maybe it's because they're just it's too much with all the other sports they have.
okay, so you think it may be a choice of BWin as opposed to some kind of betting licensing from the NBA?
Yeah, I doubt it's from the NBA, but
Hmm. Okay. All right. I mean, coming to an issue which is perhaps key in gambling topics anyway, control. How do you? Okay, so you do it for fun. Obviously, you know how much money you've got, in regards to your betting budget and so on. How hard is it for you to control that and to keep your discipline? Is this something which you sort of struggle with, or are you like really cool with it?
I think over time you develop better habits and more discipline because like last week I put money on who was it? Arsenal played somebody.
Manchester United.
No, Southampton.
Ah, okay.
Was it Southampton?
I don't know. I'd have to check
Maybe
the
last
app.
Saturday. I forget. Yeah. Last Saturday they played like Southampton, but like for me, like I looked at the roster. Southampton's a pretty solid team, and they got Theo Walcott and Ings, and they gave Arsenal like really like a lot of money, and I put money on Southampton, and they went up like 2-0 or something, and then one of my friends texted me, was like, put money on Arsenal, put money on Arsenal, and I was like, why? Like I'm winning, and they look terrible. He's like, no, I'm telling you, like, because I think they gave Arsenal like €12 for the second half to win. So you put 10 on it, you're winning 120.
And that's what you did, was it?
Yeah, and I did it, and it was stupid because Southampton ended up winning. So I still won, but I lost like, that extra $10. And
Mm.
then like sometimes I talk to my really good friend in the States, and he's still betting like through a bookie, through a friend, illegally. Um, but he'll say something about blah blah blah, and then I'm like, oh, and then I do it, and it was just like, nah, I didn't even know why I would bet on. I'm just listening to him, and I'm like, ooh, like that sounds like appetizing. Let me do that too. And then it's just without even looking at it or knowing anything about it, just putting the money on it isn't the smartest idea. Like you have to have some sort of strategy. And I think another negative is like some people lose. And then they're like, oh, I gotta win this next one back, and then they put more money in another game and they lose again. And you can get, you can get on a bad roll and lose 6 games in a row. And some of them are like easy picks, but like some Saturdays all the number one teams lose. It just happens.
Yeah, or they draw. I guess
Draw,
draws must be
yeah.
the worst. The draw must be terrible because there is no eventual winner. People don't normally bet on draws, do they? They always bet on one side winning or the other. So
I don't really
yeah.
lose too much, but the only thing about a draw is good when, say you're down the whole game, you picked Arsenal or Manchester United to win, and then they always give it up in the last minute and Harry Maguire always screws up and lets somebody score.
Here we go again.
Or Calamity Jones is out there falling down and getting a red card in the 90th minute. So
Right. Jones hasn't played in years for a start.
he's still there somewhere.
He got a red card in training apparently, so that's why he's not playing at the moment.
Oh,
You know.
he's brilliant, that guy.
He was. He's predicted to be a future England captain by Sir Alex. So
anyway, and then they're down the whole game, they tie it, and then they almost go up, and then you were like, oh man, I almost had it, But that's more gratifying than just losing to lose, if you know what I mean. Like say you're down the whole time, they tie, so you're like, oh, it was a tie, we almost got the win. But if they just lose 1-0, 2-0, you're really just pissed off. But if you got like a tie and they were down, then they made an effort, then you don't feel as bad. It's kind of weird.
Mm. In the UK, where gambling has been legal forever, I think. I don't know if there has ever been a time where gambling was not legal in the UK. But recently, I say recently, the last perhaps 10, 15, 20 years, they've really been clamping down on these bookies or these apps which don't follow people's betting habits. So, when people start losing lots and lots of money and then they continue to let them bet, this is almost punishable. As in according to certain regulations. So they have to watch out for people who keep registering new cards. They have to say no. They have to refuse bets for people who seem to have who be betting because they are addicted, as opposed to those who are betting like you, perhaps socially or according to a certain strategy. Do you think something like this will also be introduced in the US? Because I haven't heard any of that. All I've heard is simply, yeah, now it's okay. Whereas there is a huge, sort of consequent sort of sector with regards to psychology and behavioral psychology and addiction and thereafter the sort of economic bankruptcy and fallout that you can get from betting, and that's not a factor at the moment in the discussion in the US.
No, I mean I love when they send me those little. You're asking, has the US had a discussion about like the dangers of people betting too much?
Yeah, and how public is that discussion?
I mean, it's always a discussion, but I really haven't heard too much about the U.S. betting because I haven't been there. But I know like people who are betting through bookies, illegally. The bookie's not going to tell you to watch out. They just want their money. But I've also seen like a bunch of people like get into it. Like when you first learn that you can actually bet on a game, you're super excited and you're like, wow, I can bet on football, great. And you bet and you lose $150, and then some guy's like, hey, I need my money, and then you just like skip out or you pay him and you're like, nah, forget this, I don't want to do this anymore. I've seen a couple guys like they get some money together, start their own online betting with their friends, and then none of their friends pay up.
Oh, okay, and they have to carry the burden thereafter.
Yeah, but I mean, it is nice when they give you like a heads up, hey, you should probably not bet on this. And sometimes if you bet too much, they put like a blocker on your account. You have to wait 24 hours.
Yeah, like a cooling down period or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's I mean, gambling is similar to most addictions in that it can cost you almost a life, as in some of the horror stories that you sort of read about coming out of the UK, where people have they've gone bankrupt, they've resorted to stealing other people's cards, and it's destructive because it's also led to drinking and to other kind of substance abuse, and families have fallen apart. It's potentially horrific, the consequences that can follow. I wonder if in this day and age, considering some of the social issues that the USA is facing, people are stuck at home, they can't go out, they can't enjoy themselves. This could be a really bad time for gambling.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've heard about the recent Robinhood fiasco that happened last week, right?
No, tell me.
Well, there's a free trading app called Robinhood, and the whole business plan of this app is like
GameStop, you mean?
Yeah, but there's been other stocks that were put on like the Reddit stock bets that they blocked. And they said like, what happened, this Robinhood thing came up, and there's a lot of people sitting at home not working, and they get their stimulus check, blah blah blah, or they have extra money, and they started learning about stocks and investing that like not a lot of people know about or educated about in the U.S. because it's kind of like this hidden society that rich people use to make more money by just putting their money into something, investing it. But now, since Robinhood came around, it gave like the normal average Joe the ability to invest $100 in 2 stocks and then watch their money grow or lose, and they learn about it. So a bunch of guys, so a bunch of people bet on these stocks that were going to go out of business, like GameStop, and they blew up. And they went up like 2,000%, and they made a lot of money. One kid took out a mortgage on his parents' house illegally, like secretly, for $70,000 and bought GameStop. And I mean, he probably made over $500,000.
Crazy. I mean, I heard that the reason why they did this though was like a response to a fund which sort of for some reason they said that they shorted the bets, or they went short on GameStop, saying it's going to go bankrupt and so on, and this response was to basically go against the fund. Is that not what happened?
Yeah, these big hedge fund companies, they bet on the short and they make a bunch of money on the bankruptcy, and then they saw what they were, so they saw they were doing that, and then these normal people were able to just buy all the stock for that company and
so
kind of work it against them, use their own game, their own trick, and as soon as that happened, the big investors in Robinhood and these accounts in this app like called the CEO, like, you have to stop this now. So they stopped selling it. So if you already had it, you're okay, but if you can only sell it, but if you didn't have it, you couldn't buy it or buy more, and that's like against the rules. Super bad.
Okay, but how could they justify then limiting it just because this?
They can't. I'm saying it's illegal. It's fraud. You can't tell people they can't buy something in an open market. Just because that the big people and the investors are going to lose money, that they stop it. Really messed up.
Yeah, it does seem it sort of comes back to that same argument that we're sort of discussing with regards to Black Lives Matter, isn't it? It's one law for some and another completely for others. And okay, so that's why.
And it's the thing about like on the betting. This is also just betting. Like the big hedge funds are betting on this company to go bankrupt because people aren't going into GameStop. They're not going into the location to buy the games because of the lockdown. And they bet on the movie theaters going out. AMC movie theaters is all over the United States. Bed Bath & Beyond was another one. That it's like a store where you go in to like buy soap and pillows, and that's like a Danish, whatever that store is.
Yeah, Bettenanlage. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a store just like that. So they were just betting on these businesses to go out of business, and then all these people who are smart sitting at home were like, "Hey, let's just buy a bunch of it, and then it'll change the whole market." So the big guys were betting on this stuff to fail. Just like how you bet on the game, you're like, all right, well, they're playing at Anfield, and their best player is out. They're definitely going to lose.
Yeah, I guess with regards to sports, the main difference is that essentially within a certain period of time, 2 hours, 3 hours, a day or two, perhaps, if you're betting for a few results one after the other, you're going to get the conclusion to your investment, aren't you? Whereas when you're talking about shares, you have to be willing to sit on them, don't you, long term, normally, so to actually reach some kind of conclusion.
Yeah, but these people were sitting at home and kind of buying stuff, making money off it for a couple of days, and then selling it. But that's just not the way to do it. It's very dangerous, and
Yeah.
That's what I had a friend that did it here in Berlin, and he wasn't working, and he worked in finance and stuff in London. and he was doing that type of day trading.
Okay.
He lost a bunch of money. And I asked him, like, I was like, hey man, how do you day trade? He goes, don't do it.
Okay. Hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah, it's probably better that you don't do it, really, isn't it? Because especially as at the moment, I mean, are you working as much as you were before, or is it less, a lot less?
I don't know, today felt like a full day, but no, I'm working less. And I
Okay.
plan on working less in the future.
Okay. All right. I mean, but that obviously leaves you, there sort of strategizing your next adventure, doesn't it? And if it's not traveling here or there, it's probably your betting regime.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm just trying to use this time to kind of set myself up for a lifestyle that I feel comfortable with.
Mm,
And it's very possible. And there's a lot, I've read a lot of stories and information about people during 2008 and what they did when, like, economies and markets were crashing and tough times around the world, and the kind of things they invested in and the kind of jobs they were looking for and career changes. Um, and they made like these kind of decisions that people were like, what? Are you sure about that? And now they're living like, these totally different lives they were living in that time period. So I don't know. I have a couple of things planned, and I'm fortunate to live here where it's affordable and my healthcare is paid for, so I don't have all these crazy, outlandish bills and living costs, um, which is important because the U.S. It's just I don't even know how they expect people to survive. It's really getting crazy, and this last stimulus check is they're trying to get out. And they're fighting over it's like for 2,000 euros. I mean dollars. It's just like the average rent cost is set $1,600 in the U.S. and I don't know how you expect people to survive off that. So I like moving here was like it was kind of like oh just fun, see try something new, learn something new, change my environment to being like wow this is actually like a good financial decision really.
mm,
It's a good social decision financially, geographically. I enjoy living in this part of the world. I think just because of the accessibility to travel to other parts of Europe and even go to Asia from here. It's not that bad, in Africa. So yeah, I'm excited to see what the future will bring.
mm,
And now that I've been working for this long with the same company, and I kind of have a comfortable position that hopefully I'll continue to get my salary now, and we'll take on less responsibilities in the new time period that's coming, the new era post COVID.
mm. Yeah, you mentioned Africa, and it reminds me of that Egypt documentary I sent you. Have a look at it. I know you completely disagree with what this documentary says, but it seems plausible, doesn't it? I mean,
I mean, I don't. I guess for me, it's because when I went to Egypt and I did reading and we saw these artifacts and they told us about the people that were there, it makes perfect sense. It's just over time the way that people have looked and migrated to different continents and part of the world. That's why um, they look different now. But if you think about thousands of years ago, whatever, um, yeah, that's what people looked like. you know.
but I
I
mean,
think, and then there was like a huge, what do you call it, like migration
mm,
into Egypt from like Asia, like Middle East. Like a lot of those people came in and like ruled it, so that's why people started to look different. But you would think, and they all over northern Africa, and the Europeans. Well, I guess they were going into Europe, but first, but what I mean, like that, like just the occupation and the religious and all this stuff going on for all those 1,000 years made people what they look like today. But I remember, like when we were on tour, someone said like Aswan is an area in Egypt, like northern Egypt, because Egypt's like supposedly they say it's upside down, So when you say the north, it's actually the south. I think it's because of the Nile. I forget, something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like Aswan. We're saying it was like where like the black Egyptians were, or something. And that's when when they would say stuff like that, I was like, okay, all makes sense now. But you should definitely go. It was definitely a cool experience.
Give me one moment, Chris. I've just had my little boy is coming. He wants a word. We'll come back in a second. Yeah, give me a moment. Okay, all right. So after that little pause, okay, yeah. So you were saying about the look. So just to give an idea, so there's this documentary which I sent a link to Chris about, where there is a certain theory that the people that built the pyramids were not slaves, according to this documentary, but were actually like genius builders who originated from Black Africa, and so therefore they had certain very African features, and in fact this is why, according to this particular documentary, a lot of the faces have been damaged of these images, which portrayed perhaps builders and other important characters of Egyptian history by Europeans, because they didn't want to, as it were, deify people from a continent which they consider themselves to be above. But you don't follow that. You strongly believe that the pyramids were built by slaves.
Yes, I do. Just like the Great Wall of China was built by slaves.
The American Railroad.
Just how the White House and U.S. Capitol were built by slaves. It was definitely built by slaves.
Okay.
And that's just from the history lessons of the tour guides when I was in Egypt.
Yeah, I mean, but this is the thing.
I get what you're saying, but maybe they weren't slaves, but they were servants to the king. You know what I mean? Like they were building it for a king. You know, like.
But I mean, this democracy. This documentary says that they were respected builders. Yeah, as in, I appreciate what you're saying. In some ways, perhaps we are all slaves to the economy or to the rules that we follow in our countries. Depending on how creative you want to be with the language. But with regards to this specific group of individuals, they said that there is no the evidence does not point towards slaves, because it's impossible for the slaves to have built those pyramids, because you would need so many of them that
it would just. All right, Zach.
Yeah.
When you look at the size of these rocks that are these stones, I don't know, whatever they are, carved into these giant squares that they built at that time period with no machines and only donkeys, it's impossible that someone would do this for like not slave labor.
But that's what they're saying, though. But if you watch the documentary, that's what is interesting, because they say it's impossible for any number of people, for almost any technology, even today, using the technology that we have today, they say it's impossible to put those huge boulders one on top of the other to create the pyramids that they have created. And they said the only way that you could actually do that would be to essentially fill these shapes or these forms, these sort of preforms, which were then built up layer by layer. So the blocks were not pushed onto the pyramid; they were poured.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. So therefore, what is being said is you don't need an army of slaves. What you need is a couple of very, very good architects and a lot of very skilled builders to do that job, not slaves. And they point to the fact that like a village was built to house these people. I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because in those days, they didn't care if a slave died, bring in another slave, but they apparently took their time. They built homes for these people right next to the pyramids. That just, the question does, arise. There may be something to that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't. My opinion is they were slaves that built it.
Fair enough.
You know.
No, that's fair enough. As in, don't get me wrong. I'm not a denier as in any way, as you know. As in, I, strongly believe in the most horrific part of history that was the slave trade that went on for hundreds of years, and it should not in any way be forgotten. I was just saying that 3,000 or 8,000 or however many thousands of years ago that the pyramids were built, it may have been a different story. At least perhaps it would be nice to think that it was a different story. But yeah, there you go. All right, Chris. Yeah, it was cool actually to chat again. We hadn't done it in some time, so yeah, we're gonna have to do it perhaps more frequently if that's possible, especially as you're working a bit less. So maybe I can take advantage of that.
Yeah, I'm free during the days.
Yeah.
Today was a good day. Just give me a heads up.
Okay, let's talk about some controversial stuff, man. I want to argue with you. I find we spend too much time agreeing, more or less. What's going on?
Yeah, let's bring something up.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Maybe we'll find something for.
I don't know what we got to think. What?
Yeah. Don't worry. There's all sorts. There's so much to talk about. I guess the problem is perhaps drawing out a topic that that we're both particularly interested in. I want to find something that you and I don't agree on though. Because we sound too nice, man. That's just not right. Anyway, Chris, thank you very much, and yeah, take care of yourself.
All right, sir.
Yeah, take care, man.
Bye.
Bye.